have seen Black Box Diaries and Dìdi? Okay, great. Well, let's start off with Shiori. So our theme today is about voice, about evolving, going through the pain and the joy and self-discovery and reclaiming voice and that journey, both on the screen and personally, and especially for you. Can you tell us about your film for the people who have not seen it yet and who will be buying tickets as soon as this finishes?
I know we only have 2 more screenings left. Whoa. It's kind of a little awkward, whenever people come up to you and say, so what's your film? And I have to say, well, I'm a journalist and it's about my investigation of my own rape case. And they were like, oh. But then I'm always saying that it's comedy, but then my producer now stopped telling me that you shouldn't say that. So, but it's we're human beings, so there are like really shitty times, but it also like, we laugh and so I want to break the norm of victim and survivor, so that's my film.
And what about the tone of it? Because a lot of this is you're filming yourself, and you're filming yourself not knowing where this is going to go. So tell the audience about that. You're literally in front of your phone.
Yeah, so well, first, as a journalist, I just kept recording everything. I always kept this size of small recorder in my bra because the police were trying to cover up my case. And so I was just doing it for the pure protection reasons, but then I realized it's not just the police, but it's a whole system in Japan that's not really working, and I decided to make a film. So first, we didn't have anything but the audio, so I really have to come up with how do we tell this story with visuals and so on. And then as a journalist, it's really hard. It's taboo to talk about your own story, right? So I really struggle with what kind of distance I can have. I'm sure you also thought about that. Like if you're subject telling your own story in a way, you don't know how much emotion you should put in and so on. So I think more difficult time came in the editing room.
And you also didn't know where your story was going.
No.
It was all unfolding. So tell us a little bit about the timeline. This is over years, and then to make the film, it's over even more years. So tell us how long this whole process has taken.
Yeah, so when this happened, I was 25, and I became 34. I know, and in Japan, like, you're like 25 is like the age you gotta get married, and it's like a flower time, and yeah, so, but I'm very proud of myself because all the legal battle took 7-8 years, and we also didn't know where to start filming because it's about my life, and when we stop filming and put it in a storyline. But I remember we met Asian Society 2019. That was before my verdict came out, so I was so stressed. And I was telling her, and she was like, yeah, you were really stressed out.
Remember that time? But you were generously sharing your experience in a safe space that we had in a private setting. So I think that's what a lot of people admire about you, is you are personally going through this intense struggle, not only for yourself, but for a country. It's not easy to be doing this in Japan, of all countries in the world, and then on the world stage. And you're documenting it, and you don't know where the film's gonna go, and your editors are dealing with all these years of footage.
Oh my gosh. My editor is here. Please stand up. Emma Ryan. So she has to go through 400 hours of footage. Oh my gosh. She relived it, literally, and without her, we couldn't shake this film, so we had an amazing team. And Hannah Ackley, our producer, who's Swedish. So she came back to Japan right after I went public because I had to escape from Japan after getting all the death threat and everything. And she just Skyped me out of nowhere. I didn't know her, and saying that you should just move to London and escape. And I'm like, who is this blonde girl? I was so scared. And then she was like, I'm a journalist, I'm a filmmaker too, so why don't we do something? So when we started working together, we didn't know where it was going. But she said, no one can harm Swedish citizens. I have a strongest, human rights mindset. So I will come to Japan with you and be a human shield. And I really recommend you, if you're dealing with any controversial film, hire a Swedish person. It worked.
And we would like to hear from the producers and editors later in the Q&A, because you shared a lot of amazing detail in the Q&A during the screening, so do grab a mic later on. Why was the film important for you to do?
Well, so as a journalist, I published a book called Black Box in 2017, and it was just the time when Me Too broke up. Until then, I felt so isolated, and before I didn't know how to tell the story, but so I was just telling the story as a journalist, as you know, what's the process of investigating your own rape case. But then I realized I haven't faced myself as a survivor, and I felt like that's something I can do as a documentary filmmaker, and I didn't want anyone to tell my own story. I wanted to show the world that we all have a voice to talk about it, even if it's very traumatic to you.
And again, this was 2019, so it was at the very beginning of people coming out and telling their stories.
Yeah, 17, yeah.
17, right? Yeah, 17. The verdict was in 19, so even before. And give us some context about the difficulty of law and doing this in Japan for people who may not have been to Japan or know the cultural nuances of the country.
Whenever I say outside of Japan, I feel like I'm advocating like dark side of Japan, so I feel bad, it's bad, so I have to say it, right? So our rape law was set in it was like 115 years old. So when, women didn't even have their voting rights. And right after I came to public, finally, male victim can also claim the report. Before it was only for women, and our age of consent was 13 years old. I know. And we don't have any sex education, and in our rape law, like, it doesn't matter if there is consent or not. So all the way you prove the rape is how much the victim has to show how much you've been threatened and violated severely. So that's really hard, tough, because when this happened, you kind of freeze, right? And it was impossible to do it. But the real pain was I didn't know about it. I was embedded in this society, and I've been, I've been through like a public sexual assault every day when I was in high school. When you wear uniform on train, that's everyday life. And I realized I never questioned it, because if you question it, you can't go to school. So I felt like I'm the one who'd been ignorant about it, and I felt really scared if I just kept quiet. That can happen to my little sister, next generation. So I felt like this is my duty to talk about it.
Well, you're very brave. Let's hear it for Shiori. One more question before we go to Sean. The title. How did you come up with the title for your book and for the film?
So the book came up because Black Box, it was the term, it was often used from police and prosecutors saying, if these rape cases happens behind a closed door, so we don't know what's going on. So they just put it's in a black box, so we can't touch it. But then I realized there are so many black boxes in our society, and that time we didn't have any money, so I had a little green box in my fridge, which is, box wine, and I just kept drinking it, and then one time I realized, this is it. But our film name, it didn't come to my mind, so I just, kept drinking green box, but it didn't come to me. So when our consulting editor came to us, after, finishing our long editing day, she was just going home and turned around to us, Black Box Diaries. And I had tons of other names list, and I was sharing to my team, and we once had a night to vote for all the names. They hated all my idea, but my editor, I didn't name it, my editor, consulting editor did it.
I like the green box inspiration there.
Yes, and after premiere, I went to Ricker store downstairs here, and I found Black Box, the box wine. So I had like a full fruit box wine party, but no one touched it because it tasted bad. And I realized, I grew up, right? 7 years ago, I didn't feel that was so bad, and now it tastes bad.
Where did you find that? We're in Utah.
There, in a state liquor store. Okay. Go there, it's still there.
Thank you for that. Sean, congratulations on your Oscar nomination. Can you tell us about that? And I also, tell us where you were when you got the news this morning.
Yeah, well, thank you guys for being here, and thank you for moderating. I flew home late last night to watch the Oscar nominations. Nai Nai Waipo means grandma and grandma in Chinese, paternal grandma, maternal and grandma. And the doc is about their relationship to each other, their relationship to me. And so me and my cinematographer and producer, we flew home late last night, just in case we would get nominated. And we got nominated this morning. And so I haven't slept in a very long time. And I just got off a plane like an hour ago. So please give me some grace if my answers are a little scattered. And that's where I was, and now I'm here. It's great to be here.
But you were watching, I saw a video, so you were watching with family, and he literally arrived here like 10 minutes ago, so thank you for making it back for this panel discussion. But you were watching with family and with some of your stars of Whitehall.
Yeah, they're my grandmas, and so I got to watch it with my sister, I got to watch it with them, I got to watch it with my mom, my dad was on FaceTime, and we were the last film announced, so I got to the fourth film, and I was like, no, this is a waste of a flight, it's okay. And then they announced it, and it was a very happy moment. We got to celebrate for like 10 minutes, and then we were like, all right, we gotta catch our flight, and then come back here, so it's been a very fast few hours.
Great, well you're celebrating with all of us, and congratulations again.
Thank you so much. Check it out. Plug.
Terrific. Dìdi, okay, so that's what you're here for now. Tell us about the film. And again, not everyone has seen it, so go into a bit of detail about this. This is also semi-autobiographical.
Yeah, so Dìdi, I didn't realize you guys were gonna play that video. That was a video that we had to make Meet the Artist videos for Sundance. And I filmed that the day after we picture locked, so it was also after 2 months of not sleeping. But our movie it's a narrative feature, it's my first feature film, and it's about a 13-year-old boy that takes place, it's about a 13-year-old Taiwanese American boy that takes place in the year 2008 in the Bay Area, so that's the semi-autobiographical part, but it was very much inspired by coming-of-age classics that I love, like Stand By Me, Ratcatcher, 8th Grade, This Is England, even Where the Wild Things Are, movies that, are about kids, but not necessarily for kids, about boyhood, and movies that treat boyhood as loud and crass and irreverent and punk and emotional and vulnerable as, I think adolescent boyhood really is. And I realized all those movies that I loved, I had never seen one that sort of starred someone who looked like me or starred someone like me and my friends. Like the seed of the idea was Stand By Me, but starring Asian kids. And I was like, what does that do to the movie? And then it sort of, as you kind of saw in that video, it kind of grew into a movie that was a mother-son relationship story, and I kind of describe it now as a love letter to immigrant moms, inspired by the relationship with my own mom, encased in the trappings of a movie like Stand By Me about friendships and belonging.
And you had a social media component to it too, just for the tone. There was a lot of AOL messengers and all of that. Can you share the context of that with the audience?
Yeah, I think part of, I think in all the movies that I said, my brain is really scattered right now, I'm so sorry. I think in all the movies that I love, I think when you say Lady Bird or 8th Grade or Ratcatcher, or mid-90s, like the logline of those movies sound like the most generic movie in the world. It's like a 17-year-old comes of age, it's like, cool, I've seen that a million times. But then you watch the movie and it's like, it's because it's set in this place, this time, this character, that all of a sudden all the details culminate into something that feels entirely new. And it's not about a 13-year-old or a 17-year-old, it's about this 13-year-old. And so that's kind of the ethos that we took into this movie. And that was kind of the challenge. It was every step of the way, how can we make this more specific? And when I look back at my own childhood, I was 13 in 2008 in this sort of late MySpace, early Facebook, prime AIM era. I think Sundance has kind of been describing it as the early stages of social media, which I guess is true. But I kind of, I had worked at a team at Google called Creative Lab for a few years, and what we were doing there really was learning how to tell stories on screens, how to take these very cold interfaces that we use every day and make them feel human and relatable and cinematic. You know, how to take a blinking cursor and use that to emote. It's not unlike, I don't know if you guys have seen Searching, directed by Anish Chaganty. He worked at the same team as me. We kind of have the same education. And I was working on this movie, and it kind of occurred to me, you know, in all the movies that took place in the all the movies that were made in the late 2000s, none of them showed our screens in a way that felt honest or real, because I think as filmmakers and storytellers, we didn't know how to like cut to a screen yet. You see all these movies where it's like a giant bubble pops up and it's like, doesn't really feel honest. But I think as we kind of went on, we kind of learned how to integrate screens with our stories in a way that felt cinematic, that felt, you know, that didn't feel clunky. But by the time we learned how to do that, the technology had changed, how we interact online had changed. And so this felt like a good opportunity to kind of go back and take this language that we now know and, you know, take something that was so, I think, specific and relatable to so many people and bring that to life. And in a way that I think isn't, you know, like the internet being like dun 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 dun, like a hacking. You know, it's like our internet is kind of boring, but in like a way that feels engaging and honest and true. But it's not you know, it's not like social network.
Yeah, the way you use social media made it, there was a lot of humor added into it, and how the boys were taking each other's phones and like texting girls with their phones and all of that. So that was very real, and I love the humor. So I definitely think you brought that to life. So congratulations. We appreciate you being from the Bay Area, us being from Northern California. Was most of it shot there? Yes, shout out to Northern California. Was most of it shot in the Bay?
Yeah, I'm from the Bay Area. I'm from Fremont, California, and we shot in parks that I used to go to, restaurants I used to go to. The room of the protagonist is my childhood bedroom. So there's a lot of, you know, I think from the beginning, Valerie here, my producer, we kept talking about, we kept talking about this idea of wanting to make it feel homegrown and local and bring the community into it. And I think I was inspired by those coming of age classics, but I was also inspired by, you know, I think the canon of Bay Area movies. Like Blind Spotting, which was directed by one of our producers, Last Black Man in San Francisco, Medicine for Melancholy, even Searching. You know, there's been sort of a resurgence of Bay Area stories. Valerie line produced one called Fremont last year, which is kind of how we got to know each other. And so it felt like our corner of the Bay Area, there was a story there that was just as emotional, but maybe, or like a little quieter and more intimate, but like just as emotional. That felt like a different side of the Bay Area that I hadn't seen in the movies that I loved.
We featured Fremont last year at Sundance too, so congratulations. Yes. Go a little deeper about why you made it, aside from not seeing Asians necessarily on screen in that kind of genre, but why was it personal for you to make this film?
Well, I think that that reason kind of changed over time. You know, I think when me and my friends reminisce about our childhoods, I'm still pretty close with a lot of my, you know, middle school friends. We don't reminisce about high school necessarily. Like the time we always like, oh, remember how stupid we were and like loud we were. It was always that like 8th grade, middle school, junior high summer, and that again, it kind of started there. It started as like, let's mine the funny and the joy, because like there was so much comedy there. And I think I started working on this movie when I was 23. I'm 29 now, and I think there was sort of this. Our movie is a coming-of-age movie, but I think in working on our coming-of-age movie, I sort of had my own sort of adulthood coming-of-age, because there was a lot of, I kind of realized if I was going to mine the joy and the comedy and the humor, I had to mine the pain and the shame and the things that shaped me in a way that I didn't really realize they shaped me until I had the perspective to look back on. And so that was kind of where the movie really started to shape, you know, otherwise it's just kind of oh, this is fun and who cares? But it kind of, you know, made me think about all these things about my adolescence and what it was like to grow up as an Asian American kid in a town full of Asian American kids. You know, I think that was something I really wanted to unpack, because I think we've seen the stories of what it's like to feel so aware of your otherness as an Asian American, if you're like an Asian person in a sea of white people, and we've seen that narrative of like, oh, like, you eat noodles, ha ha ha. But like, all my friends ate noodles, and like, I went to my Korean friend's house and ate kimchi, you know, like, and so there was something about that feeling of, even though I was surrounded by people who looked and talked like me, even though everyone around me actually shared a similar culture to me, I still didn't feel like I fully belonged because of what, you know, culture was saying Asian American males were at that time, you know, what society was saying Asian American males were. Because I grew up around a lot of Asian Americans, I would get people say to me like, oh, you're the coolest Asian I know, or like, you're the whitest Asian I know, or like, you're cute for an Asian. And it's like, when you're 13 years old, that's like a compliment, and you're like, of course I am, like, thank you. And when you're 24, looking back, and you're like, oh, that's kind of fucked up. But it does something to the way you look at yourself and the way you look at the world, and I think that unpacking and dissecting of the joy and the pain and the shame, I was like, oh, that's something to mine. So it's not just a comedy, there's something very honest, and the more I talk to my friends who are also Asian American, I think they have similar experiences, and so that felt like a worthy path to kind of jump into. And then, obviously the family aspect came into it, so that, again, lots of love, lots of pain, lots of shame. It's interesting when you talked about your movie where it's like, but it's also funny, or a comedy. Like when we were pitching our movie, I kind of pitched it as like, it's a movie about this young Asian American boy, and he's kind of finding himself, and it's, in the different ways that shame manifests itself in a young Asian male's life. Personal shame, cultural shame, societal shame. But it's really funny. So that was kind of the impetus, trying to look at very real themes of identity through a very immature lens.
We'll definitely go into more of that. Your film has been a fan favorite here at the festival, and I understand there's an added screening for those who want to see it. Do you know when it is?
There is.
Does your publicist know when it is?
Tomorrow, 5:30 p.m. at the Holiday Inn, or Holiday Village. Holiday Village. We'll do another screening at the Holiday Inn. All our screenings have been sold out, which is really insane. So they added a screening tomorrow. I think we're still figuring out the details, but this is also a plug. If you follow our Instagram, Dìdi the movie, I think we'll do maybe a couple ticket giveaways. We'll put the link to buy tickets, and so keep an eye out. Also Anti-Gravity Academy on Instagram.
Question for you both, and it's adding on to what you both have mentioned briefly, is how have you both evolved yourselves as you've made the film, after the films have come out? Maybe we can start with Shiori.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. We just seriously pictured love like a 2 weeks ago. So right before premiere, I couldn't sleep. I was so scared and thinking, can I go back to Japan after this, or what was the question?
It's a constant TikTok movie because you just don't know what's happening as things unfold. So how did you evolve from the beginning of the film to now?
Well, it's been 7-8 years,
Yeah.
But that was a difficult part because I didn't want to put the boys from today in the film. I wanted everyone to experience at the same time. So we just went through all of my diary with the whole of my team, where I was writing everything about my breakup and all the hardship and all that. So it was very scary and vulnerable, but I was really lucky to feel safe to share this with my team, and also remember and reconstruct in a way how we tell our own story. So it was very therapeutic.
And maybe a better way to ask it is, who is this Shiori today?
Oh, who occasionally drinks green box today, but I kind of getting into natural wine now. And I'm really comfortable in my own skin now, and my, I guess, biggest obstacle was like people just labeling me as victim and journalist and every labels on me, and to try to get rid of all this and just be me.
Yeah. And Sean, how about you? You talked about it a little bit, but how have you evolved today versus when you first were making the film or thinking of the film?
I think I've grown to be more vulnerable with my friends and my family. I think there was no way to remove myself completely from. I think something about what you said. Even though ours is a feature film, like it's semi-autobiographical, and I took the movie to the Screenwriters Lab last year for Sundance, and two big things that I took away from my meetings there with my advisors were, your film, like I was really worried about the structure of my movie because it's not very plot driven, and I was like, oh, I don't want it to feel meandering, so I was very worried about the structure. And as soon as I got there, they were like, your structure's good, everything is there, your film is not broken, you don't have to do a page one rewrite, but it feels a little bit safe. And I realized like, oh, the work is not really, the work of the screenplay and the structure has all been done. And they're like, your work is on yourself. Like if you want the movie to get better, you need to dive deeper into the things that are dive deeper into the shame that you're exploring, and like I think you're not mining it deep enough. And so I think there was a lot of, therapy of looking inside and being like, okay, I remember that moment, and it was embarrassing, but it's actually a shameful moment. How do you take it from an embarrassing moment to a shameful moment? And I think learning to look at moments from my adolescence and kind of confronting them in a way that felt honest and that made me kind of grow and being like, oh, I think that really fucked with me as an adult. And then being like, and I'm okay with that. I've overcome that. And so that was a big sort of coming of age, I guess, just a long process of that. But also I think just kind of being more comfortable with what I'm interested in too. I think you're always worried about like, oh, are people gonna like this? And I think even going back to this idea of like voice and what your voice is, I think everyone tells young filmmakers like, my advice to you is like, find your voice. And it's like, okay, cool, how do I do that? And you're like, okay, yeah, again, it really is like this ambiguous advice. And I spent years being like, okay, I need to find my voice. And you kind of look out there and you're like, where's my voice? And you kind of realize like, oh, like your voice is just the things that you think are funny. Like it's the things that you and your friends laugh about. It's the things that like keep you up at night. It's the things that you question about yourself. And it's like not really out there. It's just like, once you sort of clear out all the noise, you can tend to think, you're like, oh, like that's what your voice is. It's just the things inside you that kind of make you feel. And so I think now it's like not that complicated, And so I think now that I know that's what finding your voice is or what your voice is, I think I know I'm a little bit more confident in like the stories that I want to tell.
I will give the mic to the audience for audience Q&A shortly. I have many more questions, but I want all of you to have a chance to ask questions too. A couple more though. So a quick response to that, what would be your quick advice to your younger self then? Starting with Sean and then go to Shiori.
How young? 13?
Yes, 13.
Don't try so hard. Yeah.
Good advice. Shiori?
Well then, try hard and break yourself, I guess. I don't know, well, my breakthrough was when I was 15, 16, I got super sick and I had to stay in the hospital 1 year. And that was the time I realized that there was a school in the hospital, and before, as a Japanese kid, I had to be same with everyone. I cannot be different. And I was so ADHD, so I am. So it was so difficult to fit in, and I realized being in a hospital, being with my friends in a hospital, realized that just breathing and living is enough, it was really enough. And that time I felt like, okay, let me try myself outside of Japan. And I applied for this program, and when I was 16, I wrote on my resume saying I love animals, I love nature, and they just threw me to Kansas. Wow, no Asians, no. It was like, oh, you're from Japan, cool, which part of China, you know? So that, if I didn't push myself hard that way, I don't know what happened. And I realized that time, wow, how people can be shaped with information, and that's why I became a journalist. So yeah, I don't know what advice, but yeah, just believe in yourself, yeah.
That's good, that's good. Let's talk about the other people that are in both of your films. And we'll start with Sean, because you're cast. There's a story behind how you found all your people. And Shiori, also, you had to find your people, but in a different way. And it took both of you probably took a lot of convincing. So Sean, you want to start?
Sure, I think what Margaret's alluding to is our movie has this huge ensemble of 13, 14-year-olds. And again, I think I was inspired by movies like Stand By Me, where like the boys are loud and crass and irreverent. And when I sort of thought about, just like Asian upbringings, right? Like most Asian moms are not like, go be an actor. So there's not a ton of Asian American kid actors. And I think the kids that we wanted also weren't like, we didn't want these trained sort of like dancey, sort of like, hi, like nice to meet you. You know, we wanted kids that felt raw and like rough around the edges, that felt like the kid, me and my friends when we were young. And so it sort of occurred to me that like, I don't think the kids who are right for this movie have ever even considered acting. And so our casting directors, Natalie Lynn and Nafisa Kaptanwala, they're amazing. They specialize in street casting. They've never casted a feature film before. I think also our movie kind of engages with the sort of East Asian and South Asian communities in a very deep way. And both of them are, they kind of reflect the communities that we're kind of interfacing with. Natalie is my age, from the Bay Area. We met up, hung out, and I was like, she grew up with these kids. And so for 8 months, they went to skate parks, went to basketball camps, hosted sort of auditions at middle schools, and found these incredible kids who just bring our movie so much life that it's just sort of so raw and authentic. And so much of my job was to just be like, they would come on and they'd do a take or something that were just so fun, and just to make it feel like summer camp. And they're like, why are we doing so many takes? Are we doing it wrong? And then I'd be like, oh, they've never done this before. And then I would have to be like, no, you're doing it fine. Like, we fucked up. And then there was one role, which was my grandmother, where I liked the idea of like the kids are all these like first-time non-actors, and it's like punk, irreverent, fresh energy, and the family is like rooted and warm and trained. And that was the idea, and we were having trouble finding a grandmother to play Nai, and we had already shot the short documentary, and we were like, why don't we just cast one of my grandmas? And it was this whole, it wasn't really like we knew she would be amazing, because they look amazing on camera. She like Waipo, and we ended up casting because she's just younger and has a little bit more stamina. She has the most soulful eyes, and she really is just like magic on screen. But when we were shooting the doc, it was like we would shoot for an hour and then they would go take a nap. And I was like, I think we are spending a lot of resources on this narrative feature, and we have financiers. I don't think our lead can take a nap on set. And so we were like wrestling with all of these sort of logistical, like, can she do it? We're casting Joan Chen, who's like a legend. I was like, I'm gonna go up to Joan Chen and be like, you're acting with my grandma. I was like, it was just a risk. And but we took the swing, we casted my grandma, and the first day they shot together, Joan and her were rehearsing in the backyard. I think Joan was a little bit like, all right, could be a disaster. And they read the scene one time and she was like, Sean, you're good, she's amazing. And then I was like, okay, well, can we keep rehearsing? She's like, no, you're good.
Yeah, the kids were amazing, but the exchanges between Joan and grandmother were extraordinary for people that understand the cultures. They were just, it added a lot of humor as well, definitely. And Shiori, how did you get your people to come forward?
I think it's better than me talking. Maybe these two amazing women are here, so can we maybe give the mic to Emma and Hannah?
Sure, producers and editors in the back.
Why don't you come up here? We have empty chairs.
again, this was a documentary, so they had to convince people to speak.
Oh yeah.
We might need another.
I can stay here. I'll stay here.
Oh, no, Sean, stay here.
So this is Hannah.
Hi. And Emma. Oh, thank you. Yeah.
We can do like crisscross.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yeah, so basically, Sean and I started shooting this film back in 2017. And back then I didn't know Japanese, so I filmed everything, basically. And then we just went on for years, basically.
But how did you find the witnesses to come forward? How did you get them to come forward?
Witnesses.
Yeah, the people the investigators.
Oh,
How
yeah.
did you get them to eventually agree to talk to you, agree to be on camera, even if it's just their voice, all the voices that were around you?
Well, first it was all secret, but then we needed that for my legal case. So first of all, we just made them to talk in a court and write a statement, and we just roll. But what amazing thing about Hannah, she don't speak any Japanese, and she just brought in Japanese society, and she had to follow every conversation we had with lawyers and everyone. And after a month, she's like, I do not want to hear any more Japanese. It's such a disgusting language. So, but she did it. So thank you so much.
But the doorman is pretty,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
To speak a little bit about the doorman, I wasn't there at that moment.
It was scary because that was the moment. Well, so when the incident happened, I believed I was drugged. I told the police officer, but that time they didn't know what rape drug was in Japan. They're like, what drug is that? And they didn't take it seriously, so they didn't test me. And so I had no memory until I woke up on the bed. So this taxi driver who took us to the hotel, and he was the only witness who told us that I tried to get off, tried to go to station, tried to stay in the car, and it was a horror to hear what you don't remember. But I was so happy because I doubted myself. Did I go to hotel by myself? I was so scared. What did I do? So yeah, it was so lucky that. So first we found CCTV, and hotel didn't want to give it to us, but then we kind of negotiated and we found the car number, and then we tracked down the driver. So we were so lucky to have that. So it's just all the layers of investigation that led us to find these people.
Definitely perseverance. Would you two like to add anything to that before I throw it to the audience for Q&A?
I think I'll just add that, I did Black Box Diaries, and so like she mentioned, was there's 400 hours of stuff that she had recorded or gotten her friends to record, and she didn't remember a lot of it. So it was like, here it is, and then I spent a few months going through it, and then there was the day that I decided to present the best 10 hours to get started on the actual editing, and she doesn't remember. There's a video of her in the film where she records herself to say goodbye to her parents because she's about to commit suicide, and she didn't remember. There was that, and I'm finding it in her phone, and I'm like about to show this to her so she can direct this documentary about it. It was just a wild experience, to be honest, and I think as much as there's these characters, I think what you were asking about is like the people that came forward. But I think in the filmmaking process is also like just it was like we're finding this piece of footage, and that suicide video we found it a few years into the editing, for example, and that shifted the whole film. And then like we like to talk about how it's like and then that video was almost not in the film, I would say, because for Shiori it's like, who as a director who wants to put that in your film? And then as we have to be like, we understand and we don't want to push you too much, but to tell the best story as a film, this is crucial. And so what do we do? And there was so many pieces like that we had to work, because this is her story. She's telling it, but then who can be objective? Who wants to show like the worst parts of you, your worst moments or your most vulnerable? So that was like why it took 4 years. Yeah, so there was a whole process of editing, I would add.
We're lucky because Emma grew up in Japan but also spent a lot of time in America, so she had two different views, you know, so it was really helpful. And I'm so happy now we just laughing and talking over our arguments and the fight that we had before, because yeah, I didn't want to use this old personal footage. I don't want my parents to watch it ever, you know. But then Emma is a director as well, so it really made me realize if I'm directing about someone else, I'll probably put it, right? So yeah, it's cool that we can talk about it now.
We made it. Here we are.
Do we have any questions from the audience? We do have a mic going around. And Sean, would you like to bring anyone from your film up to the stage to join you up here?
Valerie's there, but I think she's comfortable.
I saw a question there. There's a question right here with a woman with a head warmer and a ponytail. Or anyway, okay, it doesn't matter.
Hi. My question is for Shiori. So I'm also a fellow woman, a survivor of sexual assault, and I just want to say thank you, first of all, for your strength and for your perseverance through all of this. My question for you is, after seeing the overall final product of your film, how did you feel? What was your initial thought?
Can you say again? So what was?
Oh, my question was, after seeing the final product of your film, what was your initial thought? Like, how did that make you feel?
Yeah, I actually, you know, because we worked on the editing room for 4 years, at some point I didn't know what to feel. But right after we premiered, we had a huge, amazing karaoke session on the stage. And because, yeah, out of nowhere, the person from Seattle just put the I Will Survive song, and everyone came together on the stage and sing and dance, and I realized it's everyone's story, you know? And so that was the moment I felt something that, yeah, we are connected, and I'm not alone in it. I know I'm everywhere, and I'm directing, I'm in it, but so I think that was the most powerful moment that I felt like we made it here, and it's now not mine, but everyone's story. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you for being who you are. Thank you.
And the person behind you, how to say that?
Hello. I was curious to ask all of you a question actually, across different disciplines, but now like you're sat here on this stage and you've kind of gone through this kind of journey of making the film, if like almost in hindsight, if you were to give yourself like a cheat sheet of like hints or tips to your kind of, before you started making your first film, what they might be?
Oh.
So everyone, if they're just interested in finding out.
That's a really good question. It's interesting because our movie was such a sprint. We wrapped September 1st, and I jumped into the edit September 5th, and we premiered, locked the movie like a week ago and premiered it. So I think I'm still processing the fact that like the movie is premiered and we're not just going back to the edit. It's very much belongs to you guys now. And Shiori and I were talking that the last few days have been a little crazy, and she's just like, whoa, people are watching the movie, it's like sleepless nights, everyone's dancing. So I think I'm still processing the fact that like the movie is done and out in the world in this capacity, but I think the thing that, and I've said this a couple times before, but I think the thing that I would tell myself sooner is to really let the people around you help you. I think I was so used to doing everything myself in short films. Even when I had a crew, I was editing it myself. I would kind of do as much as I could myself, and I really liked the craft. I liked being hands-on, but there was something about working on this feature where, on a short you don't have resources, it's no one's job. It's like everyone's kind of donating their time, and so you're always the one who's like pushing the boulder uphill. And I think I was trying to translate that to the feature. I thought I had to, do everything, like make sure I was looking at everything, and I realized so quickly that if I didn't, lean on Valerie, cause she was like, let me help, Yeah, it was, I think just, letting the people around you help you and make you better only helps the movie. And so I think it was just learning how to let go of my own stubbornness in a way. Like, I think it's also because I'm a younger sibling. I'm, you know, and so growing up, like, let me do it, I'll do it myself, let me be independent, I'll do it myself. And now it's like, oh, please help me, I need help.
Chi-chi, that's a new word for me. Chi-chi?
Cheat sheet.
Cheat sheet. Oh, I thought it's like a new American Asian word. Okay.
I just knew what it was. I was like, oh yeah,
Chi-chi, yeah. No, well, I think it's completely different process of, you know, making documentary and feature, but I think what helped us was we had everything documented, and we call it Hannah effect because this amazing cameraman, she's amazingly like shaky and very real, and first we're like, shit, how do we put this in a film, you know, but then it's real, and because we had all the documented footage, thanks to you, Hannah, yeah, we have it. So my advice, I like Chi-chi word, Chi-chi, is that document everything if you're doing documentary, because if you're writing down also what you're feeling, if you're talking to character, if you're on location, it helps in the editing room, what kind of mood you want to put in. And that was my diary, and so yeah, that's my Chi-chi.
Any cheat sheet tips from you two down here?
Yeah.
Any other questions from the audience in the back standing?
Hi, I'm Yasna, Yamaoka Yasna. My question is for both of you, or for anyone. How do you find the balance between, I know you kind of talked a little bit about it before, but how do you find the balance between authenticity, specificity, and also understanding that some people will never understand the message? So how do you kind of find that balance?
I mean, that's a really good question, and I think for our film, I always just went back to the personal. You know, I think I was inspired, and I think our movie, you know, not to put ourselves next to these other movies that I think are masterpieces, but like The Farewell and Minari, you know, I was so inspired by when they were releasing Minari, and they were just like, we don't want to explain this movie to anybody. Like, this movie is about a family, and I was really inspired by that because I do think, you know, sometimes like when you see these films that are labeled Asian American films, and just in the context of our movie, it's like, what makes an Asian film? Like, oh, they're talking about boba or whatever. You know, it's like, I don't know, it just feels canned and not true. And I think and again, you know, that stereotype comes from somewhere. It's like, I guess Asians drink boba, whatever. But I think it kept going back to, well, who is this movie for at the end of the day? It's for, and I think for me, the answer I came to is this movie, at the end of the day, it's for me and my friends. And if me and my friends understand it, then everybody else will hopefully understand it. Because I watch movies, you know, I don't know why The Social Network's on my head, but, you know, when you see a movie like The Social Network, I don't understand any of the coding stuff they're talking about, but the characters do. So I'm like, okay, cool, I'll roll with it. And I think that's kind of an ethos that we came into with our movie. It was like, if the filmmaker gets it, if the people in the movie understand what the language they're talking about, that will translate. And so I think, again, it kept going back to the personal. And again, going back to, like, I don't want to pander to anybody. You know, I think people can feel an authenticity. So I don't know if that answers your question, but.
That was an amazing answer, so I don't think I need to say anything.
Well,
yeah,
one
just
more
be honest and believe in yourself, and just that's for
One more question in the back there.
Hi, I had a question about how you had to edit 400 hours, and at what process did you start with 100, and then did you do it all at once? What was the filtering process? Like, how did you approach that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Thank you for the question. Like, the amount of hours was not what was hard, to be honest. And maybe that's because I've directed and edited 3 films of my own that have had way more than that. It's not the amount, I think. And it wasn't 4 years continuous every day, Monday to Friday or anything. We had to take many breaks. The film went through so many renditions that it was like 4 different movies. I feel like until we landed with the right one, the best version that we're here with. So as I mentioned, I think because I also have experience as a director, I know I just couldn't imagine sitting with Shiori every day to watch the first 400 hours together. So I just I think I spent about 3 months just like going through everything, logging everything, and making my own selects of, I didn't know it was going to end up being 10 hours, but it kind of amounted to that felt right to be the baseline, because it's a lot of also nothing. Like it was 400 hours of her hanging out with her friends, like everything was so much stuff. So yeah, so I feel like from then, the hardest part was from the 10 hours, or, you know, of course we sometimes went back to stuff later, but like that process again of like, how do I approach the subject director who has gone through this and then is like negotiating, and then the form, because she did record everything, as we like to say, but there were obviously gaping holes about information. It's interesting, like what you just said was really inspiring. In Japan, it's like, when it's maybe in docs though, we have to also explain like our legal system, have basic informational facts to make sure people it's not just assume that people understand what the world we live in. So we did do a lot of test screenings to make sure like that balance of information. We think we know what we're talking about, but if no one else gets it, this, like as an editor, I'm always worried about that, so we do test screenings. So yeah, like that was the process, and the amount of, I think it's like, yeah, we started with 400, but ultimately 360 was, like a lot of it was just, and it was fun to have that stuff. And some of the scenes came back in the last few months of editing, stuff that we had left. But that was, I think it was not the amount, maybe to fiction, like narrative filmmakers and people who are like I don't think 400 is so much, I think, in the doc world. Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, it sounds a lot, but she had a lot of fun making fun of it. It could end up being a comedy film, right?
Yeah, I mean, and because she's funny. I mean, you've met her now. Like, she's funny, so a lot of it is. And I like to say that what stayed in the film was stuff that I felt like the world has never seen. Like, just like you can't write this shit kind of a situation, or like stuff that kept making me laugh, maybe even though I shouldn't. But knowing her, and then that felt real. That of course this is how she would deflect the situation, and that also made me feel like we were dealing with something that the world has never seen before.
Yeah, that was the amazing part, seeing audience reaction, like the blast of luck. I'm like, is this funny? Yeah. So like it's really amazing to see how different cultural reactions are, I guess. Yes.
Well, congratulations again to Black Box Diaries and Dìdi. Thank you.